Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I haven't done any updates on my own for quite some time. So I decided that it was time to go over some things that I've been investigating and taking issue with, and also wanted to maybe point people in a more accurate direction towards which we might be headed as a country, United States, as a world, as souls, etc. So I have a list here that I'm going to go through, and I do want to say that there are certain circumstances that are happening now because we're getting closer and closer to Trump taking office, at least in public. He's already in office as the commander-in-chief, president of the United States, as a republic, and he dissolved the corporation of the United States before he left office. It's not just me saying that, that is actually documented, and he did it, I believe, through executive order. And Jan Halper Hayes has also mentioned this on a British television show, among other things. I'm sure she's said it in other interviews she's been doing since then. So it is more or less common knowledge, at least among patriots, that Trump is our rightful president, that they have all the evidence. As Jen Halper Hayes said, Space Force has it all, and that's actually accurate according to what I was saying even years before this, right after the steal, in essence, because before the steal, this was told to us by a number of sort of patriot spokespeople, including Juan O'Savin, Charlie Ward, and probably a few others who had said that they were going to be documenting all of the voting on blockchain. So I would say that what that indicates is that the NSA was hired, in essence, how Jackie reacted. There are books written about JFK Jr. growing up in the midst of that reality. And so the fact that there could have been a hidden Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, who did live on, who was secreted away to Onassis, Scorpios Island, they say, and that John would have grown up with that father, although possibly not seeing him all the time, is possible. They've seen an older Kennedy in the audience behind Trump from time to time, as they have Carolyn, and also this JFK Jr. This, oh God, I never can remember his name, but anyway, there's a fake guy who always wears a disguise that a lot of Hollywood people have gone out, including John Denver, in this certain kind of disguise, and he has a name which is escaping me at the moment. Okay, so, but I want to continue on through some of the other things that I've been texting JFK Jr. about, Juan. And if you don't know or don't believe about that, that's fine. You can believe Juan O'Savin is a guy wearing a very fat stomach, cowboy boots, and a strange looking sort of face and hair and cowboy hat and all of this kind of thing. I have already on my Telegram outed that disguise. It was already outed to the world at the Patriot Double Down in Vegas when he came on stage, and he did that in person, and he did allow people to photograph his face, his whole self at that point. Then he went into a deeper disguise that had a bigger beard, and his face is all fat, and his stomach is super fat, even fatter than it used to be. And then, you know, he wore that to what's called the Reckoning Festival that was in Texas. I think it was a year ago. All the years are kind of merging together at this point in my mind, but I was there. I was at these various locations. I met with him. I talked with him on the phone and in person, and many times. So I have my point of view, and I can, you know, do a video maybe someday again about all of that stuff, but I want to move on from there. So at this point, I am texting that individual who calls himself 107 and or John F. Kennedy Jr. in disguise, who I believe is very close to Trump. And he is, you know, said he's goes to Mar-a-Lago on a regular basis and so on and so forth. He also stays in the Trump Hotel in Vegas, in the penthouse or one of the top suites. Now, there's more things going on here. One of the things that I recently posted on my Telegram, and most everything I'm going to talk about today is backed up by articles, videos, and commentary by me already on my Telegram. And some of it is more direct to Juan, and I don't necessarily publish it at large, but most of it I do, actually. So it's not a secret what I'm trying to drill down, what I'm trying to investigate about him, the White House, Trump, the taking back of our country, and so on. So recently I've been rewatching actually a Netflix series called Pine Gap, which I do highly recommend. And it shows you, in essence, the satellite surveillance of our globe, and specifically certain strategic areas like the South China Sea, in this case of this particular, the focus of that Netflix movie or television series. But this is what they say. They say American global power relies on intelligence gathered by 3 huge global satellite surveillance facilities. Now, needless to say, there are more than 3, but these are 3 of the most important. I don't disagree with that, although I do think that in terms of the Maui situation, there are also ones of these that are, they're set up at sea. And I did a whole presentation on all of that. So you can go back over that and so on. But anyway, so the first is Buckley Air Force Base in Denver, Colorado. The second is Menwith Hill in Harrogate, Yorkshire, which I've actually been to. And the third is Pine Gap, which is a few miles outside a small town in the Australian outback. And that's where this series takes place. So now, in terms of the series, let me see if I can get to the point. So there's no single point of failure. The reason I'm bringing this up is because of the Maui, Lahaina fires and targeted attack on what I consider to be Space Force, which was underground primarily, although some above ground in that area. And that they were, so they were directly attacked by the cabal and by satellite, and by satellite weapons, directed energy weapons, and perhaps other weapons were operational at the time as well. Now, there's a great deal of hidden, probably evidence behind a huge black fence that extends across I think, well, it's the part of Maui where these attacks took place, primarily, especially Lahaina. So I don't know the exact geography there. I haven't been to Maui, actually. I've been to Kauai, but I haven't been to Maui. actually, I was planning to go to Maui right before this happened. So anyway, so the question is that when you watch Pine Gap, you will notice that they, now, whether you want to say it's accurate, how accurate it is, etc., but it does definitely have some accuracies. One of the things is that they have teams of people behind computers, and they are watching these goings on with the superpowers, between certainly smaller powers as well, but in the global stage, if you will. And they're watching it from satellite, where they can actually zoom in, as you may know, to even the size of a quarter, could read text on page, etc. And that's ongoing. Now, this really addresses many things that we have been witnessing: attacks on us, on in the United States, on Maui specifically, and rather recently, in my mind, and also even attacks such as the attacks on Israel could branch back to this kind of surveillance. The idea here is that I'm trying to make is that there's probably exactly no chance that there wasn't advance notice, and quite possibly not only that's out in the news, where they say, like in the case of Israel, Russia had warned them, Egypt had warned them in advance, like weeks, months in advance. But I'm talking about on the day, on the hour, exact surveillance by satellite. And in the case of Maui specifically, to those attacks, and that there was overflight at that time by satellites that has been documented. And 107, I believe, has talked about it back during when this happened. I immediately talked about this on interviews at the time, so you can go back, and I also wrote articles about it, that this was basically an inside job, and that it's very likely that even NORAD or someone inside NORAD was a leak, stood down, got people, a general that might have been a traitor, got the Space Force to stand down. But this is a huge story, because it's so important to know that they knew, and they continue to know, exactly what's going on before it happens. And so the culpability that gets involved here is pretty substantial, as far as I'm concerned, with our military, and exactly how much they know, when they know it, and what they're able to do about it. So culpability is responsibility, but within the capacity you have to actually combat something or interfere with it before it happens. So all of these are huge questions that never get asked in the mainstream, and I think should not be swept under the rug even now, because we're about to have another such attack. I'm not sure how it's going to manifest. I don't know if it's going to be China, threatening us with the missiles they're putting in Cuba, a la the Cuban Missile Crisis back in the day, a rerun of that, which used to come from Russia. Now China is documented as putting missiles supposedly in Cuba. And that relates to the Taiwan situation. In other words, trying to say if that we're off the shores in our submarines and whatever else we're doing over there. And they object to that. So they're actually challenging us off the shores of Cuba, or in Cuba, and so on. So we're looking at that situation, or at least I am. And I think that the satellite surveillance depicted in Pine Gap, and by the way, also through another movie that I've been highlighting called Eagle Eye, I believe that's the name of it. And I think that's also on Netflix. And if it's not on Netflix, it's on Amazon Prime. And this is also depicted, this sort of thing is depicted in a number of movies. So they're not the only ones. And then there's also this whole idea of deep fakes that I came out about, that also involves some kind of manipulation of technology such that you can see a person who is speaking and they may be saying something that they would never say, but you can't tell the difference, and it's done in real time. So editing of speeches, let's say, of higher officials, etc., can happen. All of this is in play right now. We have doubles, we have clones. The white hats are documented, at least by some people, including what's called the real chief of police, who was the former chief of police for Colorado, who has his own website. He is not the guy who is mimicking him and saying wrong information on Twitter. So don't get mixed up. He is the guy who has a website, and it starts with buymeacoffee/truther. I think that's his exact URL. Anyway, I have interviewed him, so you can see my interview with him. And anytime you're looking for an interview that I've done, you go to my Rumble, Project Camelot, or you go to my website, projectcamelotportal.com, and just go into the search and just search for the first or last name of the person. You don't need both. It's best to use one or the other. And then you'll find the interviews usually. And also you can go to odyssey.com and go to the Project Camelot Odyssey channel. And I have over 900 videos there, probably more than that now, probably more like 1,000 or more. And I have done thousands of interviews, okay, including with whistleblowers. They're not all with whistleblowers. They're with experiencers, you know, people in all walks of life, really, but mainly exposing the secret space program that we're involved in, and, you know, off-worlders and political situations also. So I've got numerous interviews with doctors and scientists and so on. So now getting back to this list of mine and these topics. So I really want to highlight again this surveillance technology, which also does, by the way, not just involve satellites by themselves, but a network of satellites, also called Project Leonid, that involves what they are self-replicating AI satellites created by Lockheed Martin, documented by an investigator called Anthony Sanchez, who also wrote another book called, I think it was UFO Highway, if I remember the correct title. Anyway, he was writing or going to write a book on Project Leonid, and then he did an interview with me. He was threatened if I released my interview with him, so I never have done so. So there's a whole network of surveillance that does involve even a planetary AI, as Dr. William Mount has said recently, and I also documented that on my website. And I have already been told by Major Solomon Berg that we have an AI that runs the planet. And I have been told a long time ago by Jake Simpson saying that we have an AI that runs the planet and surveils all of us. So this is the thing, to be aware that the surveillance is so pervasive that almost nothing, and I would say pretty close to nothing, happens without not only being documented and filmed at the time, even close in, but also being known ahead of time. So we're really in kind of a world of the Minority Report. And in that case, they also had precogs, and we do have precogs, because I'm one of them, that can tell you, as well as remote viewers and so on, that are also working for the government, for the deep space, deep state, organization, the secret government, et cetera, et cetera. So again, trying to emphasize that this nonsense of pretending that people are surprised by anything. I mean people that work in these areas, is a lie. They're all in the know from one angle or another. And then it's just a question of, can they prevent or intercede to soften the blow if, say, they're on the white hat side, or even escalate the matter if they are on the dark side. So that, that is something that should definitely be considered from both angles. Now, recently, Juan talked about the Electoral College votes being recertified, supposedly. And he also was talking about these supposed 100 cases that they've got that he thinks are suddenly going to hit the courts again. The courts being exactly the same as they were 4 years ago in most cases, with the same judges that are bought and paid for, traitors, as well as members of the judiciary and Congress, and I'm sure the Electoral College. In other words, they're all in on this deal and they're all culpable. So recertifying, let's say, Electoral College votes is highly improbable in my view. Now, I don't know why he's talking about this. I don't think Trump even needs something like that. But what we do need is an analysis of what we call continuity of government, or COG. And that is going to come into play in a huge way now that Trump is much closer to the target of going public. All right. And again, Juan has been hinting very strongly that everything that was going to happen in the next, let's say, 4 or 5 months up to June would be making it possible for Trump to come forward. And the military, he's always said the military is the only way. So I will second that. And I know there are a lot of other people that have, seconded that, that the military is indeed the only way, because these people are not going to change their minds unless you're going to blackmail them behind the scenes and coerce them into changing their minds. And that's always within the realm of possibility. But I think it's like way more work than it's worth at this point, because we're on a sort of the playing field has shifted. Now, I do want to, I have more things to say on this, but I want to just jump to this one thing, which is, his win in New Hampshire, which is the Mike Gill, New Hampshire, by the way. Keep in mind that Mike Gill is a major whistleblower that I've interviewed, that Nino interviewed, and Juan talked to as well, and so on and so forth, who came forward with his incredible documentation of how the deep state has been stealing our funds and taking them into offshore accounts, creating probably young adults, I guess you might say, that has been utilized by Hollywood celebrities, and in essence is a vampiric, try to, sort of feeding on, one group of humans feeding on another group of humans and turning them into, etc. And also trying to use the adrenochrome to have youth. So, and if they were just to sit and meditate and activate their own Kundalini, they wouldn't need that sort of thing. But that is not in the mainstream, and something that very few humans, number one, are probably capable of. Number two, would even want to bother with. I have done it and I know it works. So now I'm going to go to, so Mike Gill, New Hampshire, and the New Hampshire primary going to Trump. Well, it's interesting because New Hampshire is one of the most corrupt states in the union, judging from Mike Gill's evidence, not all of which has been put out there apparently, but certainly enough. And Juan O'Savin and Trump have been given his evidence, as well as General Flynn, and General Flynn was the go-between in that situation, supposedly. Word is that perhaps Flynn kept some hidden in a safe. That was just from a whistleblower that I heard. But at any rate, the fact that Trump won New Hampshire, I think, is a very questionable event in light of everything Mike Gill tells us. So what is really going on now? That's what we need to look at. We need to look at what game is now being played, because these primaries are the runner-ups, obviously, to the election. And Juan has clearly stated that means on time in November 5th or whenever it happens normally, or 4th. And so what goes on? Why, why is Trump sliding through these latest primaries so easily? No steal, no evidence of steal, at least apparently, but there is a setup coming, okay? I think you can guarantee it. And I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if they're going to try to substitute somebody for somebody. Is just some tool. He's a tool. So why would you run against a tool? I mean, this kind of absurdity is going on constantly in our country right now, and drives me crazy that people, number one, can't see it, but number two, we don't have like something like the EBS that was supposed to educate people a long time ago as to what's really going on, and continuity of government, COG. Now there's a website called devolution.link, I think is the URL. And I just put it on my Telegram again, that was put together by a guy named Patel Patriot, who's come out under his real name, which is John something. I don't have it in front of me. And he also has a Telegram channel in case you're interested. And he's been doing even interviews and discussions with people. I asked him for an interview a long time ago, but he never replied. So that documentation is the best, as far as I'm concerned, education for anyone out there who doesn't know what COG is, who doesn't know COG, COG stands for continuity of government, and that Trump set everything up knowing that it was highly likely that he would lose his second term. He wouldn't get into office on the second term. And as a safeguard, he already put in place executive orders to make way for substantially what was already in place in our Constitution, or as part of the Constitution, and laws for continuity of government in the event of anything interfering with our democracy in a substantial way. Little did I realize that that was actually what happens after 2024. Okay, so it didn't happen then, but I saw that dream and I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen? Trump's going to probably win because he's going to get rid of the immigrants, but it's not going to be, he's going to make for a big exodus. And sure enough, now he talks about that all the time as one of the primary goals when he gets back formally into presidency, even though he's already president. And, you have to wrap your mind around, and this is a huge elephant in the room, is how have we been operating with these two supposed presidents when the White Hats have a certain amount of control, meaning the White Hats, the Space Force, everything, all the military generals that are sided with Trump, versus the military generals that are sided with the CCP still working and getting paychecks from Rothschild, of all things, and working for basically the cabal and the deep state. So this is what we have had going on. And this has been ongoing even before this thing where Biden came into office. We had a split in the military where one side of the military does not even know what the other side is doing. And that's actually been documented as well. There was a missile that was towards Catalina Island off the coast of California that came from Arizona, probably a Space Force missile. I don't know what they were headed towards or aiming at, but that was a story that hit the mainstream. And both sides of the military didn't even know why it was there or something, like at least one side completely denied it ever even happened, but it was documented. So this kind of thing has been going on. So keep your mind, active and alert to the lies that both sides tell. And all of it is a game of basically a super spy versus spy game between the two sides. And this is why Juan does not always tell you exactly not only what's going to happen, but he also tends to maybe at times mislead us, like this electoral college thing and all the cases that they're bringing forward to a court that's already been proven to be total traitors, and so barring the idea that they're going to be, blackmailed, as I said, I don't think these people are changing their minds. If they were already blackguards, they are blackguards today. Or you could call them Satanists or whatever they happen to be doing. So that's important. Now this is I think I'm taking a while, but it's kind of interesting to go down these roads. So let's see. So at one point very recently, there's his name is Dr. Mount, and he is a doctor, but he's also a former, and I think he's currently still Army intelligence. He doesn't say that, but I think he's still involved. I interviewed him many years ago. And he is quoting somebody called Ken Dunn, who claims to be in touch with the Pleiadians, who I'm not really sure is, and saying that there was going to be Trump back in office in 5 days. Well, I think we've already passed the 5-day mark, so that hasn't happened. But it was interesting, around the same time Mount was saying that, JFK Jr. / 107 was on a show saying that Trump would be coming back and we would have two presidents. It would be obvious to everyone. And that would happen around June. So it looks like maybe neither of those things are happening, at least the way they're saying it's going to. And I'm thinking that what is operational here is keeping the deep state guessing as to when Trump and the White Hats and Space Force and the whole continuity of government is going to kick in and go public. That's the key. Now, what does that mean? It means that we need to know who controls, I call it the airwaves in essence. So for the EBS to even happen, and my understanding is they've actually come close, the White Hats, to doing an EBS. They have invaded Mount Weather, which is close to Washington, D.C., and I think they took that base over. And this was a while ago, and I actually reported it. It was reported on something like the Real News, whatever they call themselves, but a lot of people think that's complete disinfo. It's not. The important thing about, disinfo in the intel game is that you always have some truth. And I think that ingredient was true. However, Juan is still saying that the SES has some control over the media that the White Hats don't have. and that's the Secret Executive Service. And that gets into my next and probably final points, which have to do with what is the link up between SES that Juan is talking about. And he's talked about, I put a link already, and I'm going to document the show, one of the shows where he talks about it. And he talks about how senior executive service are the most well-paid members of our government, is how he puts it. And arguably also a collection of the top agents and officers of the intelligence agencies, of which there are at least 7, probably more. And that those individuals and others, including members of the FBI, which Juan details, have been paid separately and worked on black project jobs and what you call black ops under the SES banner, paid off the books in essence, even while they're still working for FBI, CIA, and all these various agencies, which is clearly illegal, but that constitutes part of the secret government. And this is where Juan has kind of stated unequivocally in several videos that SES is actually the biggest opponent to the White Hat's agenda, at least as that's how he's worded it, more or less. So that's what's stopping them from being able to move forward. Well, I would clarify that a bit and say that what we know of as unacknowledged special access projects or programs, which is part of the secret government, the black projects, we call it black projects, meaning hidden, which I've been documenting with whistleblowers for years, talking about that. They hit on this, by the way, in the UAP committee hearing. They grazed up against the surface of these unacknowledged special access programs that involve, by the way, our defense industry and all of the aerospace companies that work in essence as contractors for our government. And mostly, some of them absolutely full-time on these secret projects, which constitutes the secret government again, and what I call and what is known of generally as the secret space program. So when you take SES, which is a way of paying them off the books, these, at least the ones on surface Earth. Now there's probably a whole organization that is organized even differently in the underground bases and on the basically the colonies and various bases that we have going out into the solar system, which I have been documenting and talking about through my whistleblower testimony and my own, basically connecting the dots for past, the last 20 years. I've been doing this for close to 20 years at this point. So when you look at that, you have to realize that this whole thing kind of culminates in Trump and the White Hats and Space Force and all the generals that back Trump coming forward in a military way at some point, and they're going to have to be explaining continuity of government, which does substantiate how the White Hats have been behaving over the last 4 years while we had 2 presidents, in essence. Although this other president, he's been a fake the whole time. He's just a puppet run by the cabal and the CCP. So I hope this is not completely, hard to understand. I think it should be fairly simple and straightforward at this point. And I hope you can follow these trails, and I'll put all the links, but you can really go to my website and just watch the videos and eventually get a clue as to what I'm talking about and what I've been talking about. I've written numerous articles, and I can go out and try to find those and put them together on my Telegram for people to be able to see them one after the other also. But I think that covers most of what I was going to talk about. And yeah, I think that's good enough for this video, because I have so much stuff that it's just insane. Let me just make sure if my list here is complete. Oh, right. Okay. So then I have another short bit. Sorry if this is so long, but that talks about what is in essence a list that I'm making. And it's a list for what happens when in essence Trump comes forward as who he really is. And by the way, that should include a lot of the stars and well-known personalities, and even, you know, but didn't die, went into witness protection because they were threatened by the cabal. And of course, JFK Jr. was one of those people, okay, which is why he's been in disguise as 107 all these years. Now, they have been doing, this has been documented by some very good sources, public, okay, they have been doing tribunals behind the scene, but supposedly not substantive, that they're saving what are going to be public tribunals with public officials, which is a military court that has is going to be trying these actual traitors to our government that have also been things like adrenochrome junkies, what the whole Epstein story is with that island and other islands as well, okay, that are great places for them to hide this kind of behavior, et cetera, et cetera. The honeypotting of all the members of Congress and so on. So there's that. Then at some point, Space Force will do a full takeover. They've already started, I was told, of the Pentagon and the whole secret space program. Now, how that's going to happen, if it's going to happen and still require battles, even underground, I don't know. I don't know what kind of arrangement they've made with the people who are in charge of our secret space program. There probably will be a new location for the White House and offices, and I'm sure they're already operational in places like Idaho, Utah, and Colorado, underground primarily. There will be the mass exodus of immigrants that I saw in my dream, and Trump will definitely have happen. Okay, so I'm gonna, I can't do that right now. And then let's see, the arrest and trial of Fauci, the doctors and nurses who actually and took part willingly and should be up on trial and prosecuted to the full extent of the law, may I add. Total exposure of the pandemics and how they came about and how they will continue. They're continuing to try to pull that, and obviously stopping it. I mean, if the White Hats and Trump are coming forward, I assume these are things on their list of to do and must be done for the public to actually trust them, in my opinion. Revealing who's in Gitmo, who's at Diego Garcia, the hidden members of who are up on tribunal or supposed to go to tribunal or so on. So I've talked about, okay, so the senior executive service, there's one thing about the video that Juan does talk about that I just want to highlight, which is it has a symbol, he says, of the keystone, which is an occult symbol, basically a gate into unseen world, what is an interdimensional portal. And that is, you know, a common sort of portal is very common, sort of turned into a Stargate is how we go out into outer space, not going through the Ort Field and all of that. Let's see. And then he talks about that I guess the SES sort of started back in the day of Carter and the military and intelligence community, Rockefeller and Bush Sr., and that Nixon read in Trump early on all of this, and that there are directives, military orders, executive orders set up under the Senior Executive Service related to COG. And that I'm searching for right now, but I think it could be found on devolution.link, but I'm not so sure. It may be secret, but it's important to note that. So we have a COG that President Trump put together and that was already part of the body of sort of protective gestures for our government in the event of that Trump added to before he left office. But there's also SES that has maybe their own version of that. So that's worth noting. And just a highlight as to how the American people are going to be told in such a way that they can understand it, that we have been invaded by the CCP, by, and whether or not they bring forward the blockchain finally, and the fact that it's all on satellite, and the NSA is totally working, at least part of it, with the White Hats and the Trump organization. So this is major, just a lot of things that I don't see out there that I think people should be aware of. And I'll try to address these things again in the future. And hopefully this will kick off a lot more discussion on a higher level than what I've seen out there lately. Thanks for watching. Thank you for supporting my work all these years. Those of you who do subscribe, it's really less than the price of a latte to subscribe to my website. That keeps us alive. $3 a month. So, if you're able, then that would be great. If not, they're also at the middle of the website. I have products that I've interviewed the principals on. I use them myself and I advertise them, and I get a small commission when you do buy them there. So by clicking on those links. So please support us in that way and our advertisers. Thanks again for watching and have a great day. Bye-bye.